Hi, my name is JJ and welcome back to the latest edition of the Warehouse Whiteboard. You may be wondering, why JJ, do you have this ridiculous picture behind you covering the whiteboard and actually not using all the wonderful properties of said whiteboard? Well, let's dive into that today. The reason we have this picture of the blind scales of justice, and I understand it looks very little like the classic picture of the lady holding the scales. The reason we have that is last night we did a little bit of a trial here in our Warehouse Youth Ministry. And essentially our trial was an attempt to answer this question. Can God be trusted? Is the God of the universe, the Yahweh of the Bible, trustworthy? And the reason we're asking this question is because it really is a central question to the topic of this month's checkpoint that we're discussing, and that's the question of authentic faith, or the idea of authentic faith. If we're basing our faith on the God of the Bible, if our faith is going to be authentic, we should probably back up and ask that question, can God be trusted? And so we approached that last night sort of like a court case, with giving the students a chance to present proof as to whether or not they believe God can be trusted. And there was a great exchange of ideas, great things brought up by the students, all sorts of different ideas, such as evidence from the Bible. What stories in the Bible do we see that prove that God can be trusted, where he promises this, and then that ends up happening later in time? But we also pushed it a little farther. We kind of went to the whole concept of, source material can't be proof for its own material. And so we said, what outside of the Bible can be used to help us understand that God can be trusted? And there are lots of historical evidence that the students pointed out, everything from, Dead Sea Scrolls to different things in creation that we see, all the different evidence that points to not only the existence, but the truth of who God is and how he goes about his business with his creation, with people. Because really we wanted the evidence to drive this authentic faith that we're shooting for, that we're really about. It's not about circumstance, but it's about evidence. And not just evidence so that we can empirically prove things, because empirical proof is the only thing that matters. God supersedes that empirical proof. But if our proof, our basis on our faith is merely circumstance, that can be kind of shaky ground. Let's face it, our circumstances change a lot, and our minds change a lot, and our whims go from back and forth and all sorts of different things. And we end up needing to make sure that our faith is based on something more concrete, something a little bit less shaky and more concrete, such as evidence. And not only the evidence in Scripture, not only the evidence we can find in history or in empirical proof, but also the evidence of the truth in our lives. And that was another element that the students presented last night in their case for Can God Be Trusted, is their own testimony. Evidence that they've seen of God's activity in their own lives, in their family's life, times that they've had hard times going on and God has come through, seen them through those times, or even stories of prophecies that have come true in and around their lives. Lots of different evidence to prove the fact that, yes, God can be trusted. And where we landed with this was that classic verse from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. We don't want to lean on our own understanding, because that sounds a lot like circumstances. And let's face it, our understanding has clear limits. And Paul talks about that. When I was a child, I thought like a child. And so many of the times we all have gaps in our understanding, or gaps in our thinking, or different ways that we just continue to come up short, and our circumstances can push us one way or the other. On a good day, maybe we're all about God and God is the coolest thing ever. Then we have a rough day and we start to say, I guess God doesn't care. And that's so common. It's so, it's not an abnormal thing for us to think that, what's going on, Lord? But we want to make sure that in those times, especially those times when trouble comes, that we are not leaning on our circumstance for our proof of who God is and that he is trustworthy and is who he says he is. But we're relying on the evidence, on our own experience of faith, on the truth that God has been in our lives, but also the truth that we find in Scripture and the truth that we find in the world around us. The question of can God be trusted, that court case here held in the warehouse last night, we came to a point of a definitive yes. God can be trusted. And it then becomes our job to trust him in an authentic faith that we will build on more as this month goes on. So thanks for tuning into the Warehouse Whiteboard, and we will see you next time.